Thank the Chairman. Dr. Kowinski, I want to take this a little bit different direction. You've made three different statements that I really appreciate. One is you want to exercise greater oversight. That's always good. You say you want to make game-changing investments. I think the committee supports that. You said you want to do it right. And I think in the broader perspective of helping people been appropriated for disaster recovery, and particularly in the longer term. Obviously, we don't have a lot of choice. We have to appropriate money up front for search and rescue, medical aid, that sort of thing, getting food to people in particular areas. But in the longer term perspective, we've touched on a little bit of this, and that is building in resiliency for future disasters, which we're never going to have, particularly weather-related, which will, I think, require that we repeal or reform the Stafford Act. Is it my understanding that that is the position of FEMA, or you just want to play around with the edges of it?
So we're certainly not advocating a repeal of the Stafford Act, if that's what you're asking.
What I'm specifically referring to is we've had disasters, and particularly like in Puerto Rico and places like that, where you've had a bridge washed out, and the bridge is replaced, and it's basically the same structure in the same location, where, and we've talked, I think the Madam Chairman brought this up, I believe it was her that brought it up about paying for the same house multiple times. If we were smart about replacing structures, whether it's a bridge or a building or utility lines, that we put them in places where they wouldn't be destroyed a second time or a third time or a fourth time. That's what I'm getting at. That would require some reform to the Stafford Act.
So let me point out that we have several programs that are authorized actually in the Stafford Act that can help with situations like that. Now we're talking about mitigation. There are multiple mitigation programs. Of course, the one we're all most excited about is BRIC. But we have existing programs. I mentioned PDM, the existing pre-disaster mitigation program. I won't delve on that anymore on that. But our existing post-disaster mitigation programs, that includes dollars, mitigation dollars that can be used for strengthening infrastructure, for doing things like you're talking about, for taking away risk from those vulnerable areas. In addition, we have mitigation programs that can strengthen on a project-by-project basis following a disaster. In other words, why, the saying, don't just build back better.
Right, build back, engineer better, and build back better. Now, on that line, that's the longer-term issue here. It's once you provide the immediate aid and you stabilize the situation, then you start the longer-term rebuilding process. I ran a think tank for 25 years, but prior to that, I worked for 2 international engineering companies, and one of my concerns is how we handle contracts. I know Congress has been big on the community block grants, but there's an inability to track where the money actually goes, and after the initial funding for the recovery, that for the rebuilding process, that we do build an invoice. That if you let a contract, and again, this is what we would have done in the engineering world, we'd have a contract and we would pay the contractor as they completed certain percentages of the project. That way you've actually got more oversight and it allows you to do it right. The 2 things you said you'd like to see FEMA do.
Yeah, so one of the really great provisions that's in DRA that we implemented almost immediately was increased management costs.
Yes, but I asked specifically, are you willing to do it on a pay-to-invoice basis so the contractor is, you've got excellent oversight over the contractor?
Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that specific aspect, but several of the provisions in DRA both enhance transparency and enable state and local governments, our partners, who may not have that oversight ability that the federal government does, to provide them additional tools and additional funding to do exactly that oversight you're talking about.
Well, I'm pretty sure that you and a number of us in this do much of anything that required substantial cost to us and just hand somebody a blank check and tell them to build it. But that's what we do with the federal government.
Well,
And I really
we
think
reimburse.
we're not trying to pick on FEMA. What we're trying to do is improve performance
Agree.
and meet needs and do it in a way that gives us the opportunity to mitigate against future damage and disasters and provide the best use of the taxpayers' money. Madam Chairman, I yield back.
Can I